You know, some of you have probably heard that drinking, smoking, and cussing are sins. Damn it, they're probably right. um, Hi, I'm John, and I'm that weird guy that applied for the position of weird uncle in your tribe. Um, Still haven't received any offers on that yet. But anyway, as I mentioned in an earlier video, February life, and I have gone through and collected experiences that would pretty much fit under the umbrella of metaphysical experiences. And the one I want to talk about right now is the near-death experience, or the NDE. And one of the interesting things about NDEs is that the science has changed the definition over time, because in the 40s, 50s, 60s, there was no AED hanging on a wall so that if someone had a heart attack, you could slap stickers on them and push a button and bring them back. The same thing too with CPR. So it's like, early on it was like, oh, if the person's heart stopped, then they're dead. And we had to change that definition. So, well, if a person's heart stopped and they stopped breathing, well, now they're dead. And now it's gotten to the point where the science is, well, has the brain ceased functioning, and have they been deprived of oxygen for more than an hour? And even then, there are cases where that doesn't quite fit the bill either, in case that person's been, refrigerated in some capacity. So the benchmark for death keeps moving. But still, the near-death experience, that paradigm of itself, is still in existence. And the human experience, it's there because people have been near death and came back for much longer than American Western society has been looking at it. So there are ramifications to that, and people keep trying to slap labels on it. So because they figure if they label something, then they understand something. That's not really the case, but it makes you feel better. It's kind of like farting in an empty room. It doesn't really affect anybody but you feel better anyway. But in my experience, I was aware of the near-death paradigm, and I had read up about it, but it wasn't until I had multiple organ system failure, and my lungs stopped, my kidneys stopped, my heart tried to stop, that I actually had my own experience. And then it was one of those experiences that I didn't mean, consciously at least, to experience, but I had it. And so it was something that I had to integrate into my being. And there's all sorts of weird ramifications that come with that, which I'll talk about at some point in time. But you have the traditional experience of going through a tunnel and being in a place that's very bright, sensing an entity or being that's there that, for lack of a better terminology, you would call it God, but it's something that's a lot smarter, a lot wiser than you, connecting with that being. And then usually there's some sort of an experience. There's a download of information that kind of comes with that, and then when you come back, you have this new universal encyclopedia stuffed in your head. And so then you try to figure out, what do I do with this? And it's frustrating for the other people around you, because it's kind of like, you know, if you're driving around a 1986 Kia, and then someone, you know, drops in a Corvette engine. It looks like the same vehicle, but its abilities, capacities, and expectations have changed. So sometimes people have trouble looking at a book cover and realizing that the story has changed. So there's all sorts of ramifications that come with that. And again, I'll elaborate on those, later on in the class. But the first thing that struck me, again, I had worked in healthcare, but I wasn't a nurse yet. Was actually studying to become a nurse at that point. And the thing that appeared to me was that there are a lot of parallels between people who've had PTSD and what that looks like and what the treatment protocol is for that, versus people who have had an NDE. And it would be a few years later that I also discovered that this would also be the same type of paradigm that people who have had an abduction experience go through. And so it was curious to me that that those experiences basically change your perception of reality and how you perceive the world. One's more of a let's change your meat suit, abduction experience, versus a spiritual one. There's also been some experiences where people have had, I don't know what you want to call it, like a satori, or epiphany, or rapture. You know, pick the noun of choice, but essentially what's going on is the paradigm of who you thought you were and what you thought you were get blown out. And it turns out that you don't have to have a near-death experience. Or as I put it, as God did not have to put you in timeout. There are other ways to experience this. Prayer, fasting, meditation, oxygen deprivation, high intensity exercise. And again, high intensity just really depends upon the person. Along that same tangent, orgasm sometimes has actually brought that about. Boy, that'd be a weird first date. Any kind of deoxygenation, especially people coming out from deep depths and going through the bends type of thing. Pharmaceuticals, legal and not. There's all sorts of pharmacodynamics that can bring this about. Even setting an intention, especially after you've had that experience, once you cognitively realize that your consciousness and your body are not the same thing, and that you can direct your consciousness through intention, then things get a little odd. Again, it's kind of hard to explain quantum physics to a 4-year-old. And I'm not diminishing those people who, I'm throwing into the 4-year-old thing. We're all on different levels. We're all learning at different rates. And just because someone is, a 4-year-old 1 year, they may go through a shit ton of changes, and they end up becoming, a master level in master's degree level. So I'm just saying that sometimes some lessons are not ready to be taught, and sometimes they are. So but anyway, so the class class discussion, a chance to sit down with similar people and just cuss and discuss the whole paradigm and what it means to them, and what I discovered, as well as the research that I've done. So after I had my near-death experience in 2005, I had the opportunity in 11 to reach out to a group called the International Association of Near-Death Studies. Told them, my background, my pedigree. Essentially, I'm a nurse that does clinical research and builds clinical trial databases. I'm good at taking raw data, putting it into an organized structure, and then pointing out the trends, as well as finding some interesting outliers that are good talking points and keeping people interested. So, for example, one lady said after a near-death experience, she had the ability to control electrical devices with her mind. Another lady said she had the ability to levitate after her near-death experience. So yeah, there's all sorts of interesting stories out there that do not necessarily fit into the traditional human paradigm. But then again, we're not so much educated as we are indoctrinated, but that's just my opinion. But anyway, what I'd like to talk about in our fireside chat, is what is an NDE? How is it clinically diagnosed? What are the ramifications following that NDE? As far as maybe the integration, the psychological integration, but as well as the physiological recovery of that. And then how that healing paradigm also parallels PTSD and UFO abductees. And then I'd also go through some different derivatives of the near-death experience, because again, the definition keeps changing. And so now there's not just an NDE, but there's an N, the small case N, NDE, the near-death experience. And there's also an S, small s, NDE, a shared near-death experience, which I've also had a couple of those too. As an oncology nurse, I had actually had a couple of patients that made their transition on my shift, and I found myself helping them up the tunnel. And then there's actually the whole subset of people who've had the near-death paradigm, but they didn't go through the pesky death part. And again, it's those folks that had those other experiences and those other on-ramps. And so that's been quantified as a STE, not an STD, very different discussion. But an STE, spiritually transformative experience. And again, it's one of those other on-ramps. You have this, Satori, epiphany, rapture, whatever you want to call it, that transition or that download of information, and then you're reintegrated back into society, and then you're trying to figure out, what do I do with this new knowledge? Curiously enough, about half the people come back and they're wired for sound, man. They hit the ground, all wheels are turned the same direction, they're gone. And there's other people, which I kind of fell into that group, where the wheels are all sorts of different directions. Maybe one wheel is still in the trunk. You're half in the ditch, half on the road. The assimilation process can sometimes take up to a decade. Some people never resolve it. Personally, I think I'm still working on it. But those are some of the things I'd like to talk about, and if there's enough time to move on from that, then I'd like to talk about the integration of that. So in the research that I did, it actually was published and discussed during a 2015 exhibition. And one of the physicians that is carrying on the torch after Ray Moody is Dr. Bruce Grayson. And he actually has an NDE test to kind of see the intensity of your experience. And I have access to that test. So if we have enough time, and if I have enough experiencers in the room that would be interested in doing that, then I think we'll probably integrate that into the class, our discussion as well. And if not, that's fine too. Reach out to me personally, and I'll make that test available. But I think it's important to, especially after 2021, a lot of people got their cages rattled and determined, what is life all about, and it's more than just getting a job, acquiring debt, and paying off that debt. And I think once you start scratching at what is reality, I think you will quickly determine that reality will bend to your expectation. And so my hope is that the classes and stuff that I've collected and that I will share with others will inspire others to scratch that itch and develop a new reality, something that we can all kind of share in and make it a more interesting place than what it has been up to this point. I mean, don't get me wrong, 2020, 2021 have been pretty interesting, as much as maybe a root canal from your proctologist can be, but I think there's a more positive way to come at it, and that's the part of the equation I want to participate in. So I hope you'll come to the class. Hope you'll enjoy it. Hope you'll participate, and hope we all come away with new ideas and new thoughts. That's my hope. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye.